So a warm thank you to our opening speakers who gave us an introduction to experiences in different member states across the European Union. And you can start to see some of the themes emerging that we will address in more detail later this morning. But just to close this session, I'd like to show you a video which gives us the key figures, the challenges faced by this sector. So let's watch this video.
Good intentions don't cut it anymore. The EU already counts on 10 million PHS workers, and it's going to need many more. Autonomy, independence, dignity, and quality of life are the key drivers of today's society. Being able to stay at home when you grow older, when you're dealing with a chronic illness, a disability, a challenging work-life balance. It should be possible. Everyone's life path and needs are different. Freedom of choice is central to conciliating private and professional lives of EU citizens. Europe needs domestic and home care workers. But at the same time, the sector is heading for a crisis. Lack of social rights, limited social protection, restricted access to the labour market. For decades, domestic work, including care, hasn't been treated as essential, worthy of social investment. These workers are still among the lowest paid. 91% are women, and half of them are migrant workers. Many remain unseen, their work undeclared. The home care sector is essential to our society. It provides personal assistance and supports independent living. So why are these workers not identified as such? Why are their skills not recognized at fair value? Why is their working relationship not formalized? The domestic and home care sector must be acknowledged, regulated, and funded. It is necessary to build a favorable environment, one that allows a sense of trust to be established between the supported person and the caregiver. We need recognition for the status of the household as employers and of the domestic and home care workers at European level. And that requires clear frameworks, social policies that meet citizens' needs, because to meet current societal challenges, we have to make sure it is affordable and remove the complexities of hiring a domestic worker. We need to guarantee fair working conditions in order to foster attractiveness. Domestic and home care workers, we need all of them. Those that provide direct, interpersonal care, like childcare, long-term care, and those that provide indirect supportive care. Think cleaning, ironing, gardening, home repairs. Both activities are crucial. They're inextricably linked, and they must be considered as part of the domestic and home care sector. Today is about addressing the unaddressed. Help bring the sorely needed change. It's time to care for domestic and home care.
We're now going to move to our first panel, which is going to address demographic issues and worker shortages, which we saw highlighted in that animation in the domestic and home care sector. We're going to explore the strategies we need to attract new talent. So let me invite to join me here on stage Philippe Sédel-Leroy, the Policy Manager for Social Protection at Age Platform, Carmel Acedo, the Vice President of the European Federation for Family Employment and Homecare and the President of Grupo SSI from Spain, Pierre-Olivier Ruchenstein, the member of the French Economic and Social Committee and Director General of FEPEM, the organization that's representative of household employers in France, Alfonso Gurpregui Ruiz, the Vice Minister for Employment and Inclusion of the Basque Autonomous Community in Spain, and Nicolas Defey, the author of EFFE's Lab's second report that's coming out soon on skills, workforce and migration. Please take a seat. Thank you. So Philippe, let me invite you to first set the scene for us. What are some of the challenges for older people who are in need of care?
Is that okay? First of all, happy birthday for your 10 years. I think, yeah, I hope that at a certain point in time you will be able to sing for this, maybe not now. I'm a bit... So I prepared to take you a little bit back into 3.5 years ago, about essentially the first moments when we realized that COVID was among us and governments were taking the actions that they took in the first phases of the pandemic, of the heavy lockdowns. And I don't know for you, but for me, a very sort of personal experience at this moment was one of cognitive dissonance. We were sitting at home, shops closed, schools closed, and nothing was happening. Yet, COVID was going through our care homes and infecting people, and you saw from time to time ambulances in the street, but that was about what many people saw from the pandemic. To us at Age Platform Europe, so we are an organization of older persons, of and for older persons, this was exposing that the care system that we have built does not work. Precisely this cognitive dissonance, because something was happening, something dramatic was happening, but most of society did not feel it, did not see it, heard it from it in the media, but did not experience it directly. And so what I mean with our care systems is the idea of putting aging away from society, putting aging into dedicated institutions that take care of them, and whatever happens in there is not considered, not felt to be part of our everyday lives, of all those who are not inside there. Of course, I'm a bit extreme in saying this, because we all have maybe close ones who are in these kinds of situations, whom we did call during these times, to whom we tried to maintain contact. But still, it was something striking, and for most of these problems already pre-existed. They were just made visible by the pandemic.
Okay.
And this was the starting point that we need to reform long-term care systems very heavily, and we have to bring older persons back into society, also if they have capacity impairments. And now I'm closing the arc. This particular sector of domestic care, of household care, is, it was said several times in the video, crucial, is a cornerstone of this transition, because it means keeping people in their society, keeping people in their homes, keeping people connected, and have care come to them, rather than having them come to care.
Okay. So thank you for again highlighting and reminding us of that unique experience that reminded us how much of care for older people is invisible, set apart. What are the solutions that AGE is advocating for?
In terms of solutions, it's this development of home care, of community-based care, which comes by a much higher need of coordination, by being more creative in terms of funding, because home care is sometimes not considered to be, or not funded in the same way as institutional care. So there's a certain bias. For example, municipalities might fund their municipal care homes, and then people are maybe free people who need it are free to go there and move there, but the same is not necessarily true for home care services. So this is the general trend towards having care at home is one of our solutions, but we do acknowledge that it comes with many challenges, such as upskilling, such as need for funding, such as skilling also for the more unskilled tasks, because when you're at home and the only person that you see is the domestic helper, then this domestic helper has not only a function of cleaning, but a function of checking in how you are, having a contact with you, developing a positive relationship, explaining to you what happens outside, etc., when you're no longer able to go outside. And so this person becomes an interface to the world. And this is not necessarily seen as a role of domestic workers. And so this is why I say upskilling and reconsideration of their function, because with this transition they have a much stronger role to take than if they were just let's say, household cleaners for families who are otherwise involved. For this particular group, they are much more important.
Thank you, and again for highlighting that work is not just work, it's also social interaction, it's cultural development, it's tackling loneliness, it's social support, it's all of those different aspects. Thank you for that. Carmela, let me turn to you. We heard from the Spanish minister some of the things that they're doing in the EU presidency, but could you give us a little highlight? What's coming up at national level in the coming months?
So I would like also to underline what is happening currently. When the Spanish government started the presidency in July, its commitment was in favor of a more social Europe for long-term care and to start all this transition process. Mr. Alvarez identified the need to have a European care strategy and to work in a common strategic framework. In Spain, I think there is another challenge within this framework of demographic challenges, the care crisis, too many women, inequalities between men and women, the lack of professionalized workers, low salaries, lack of attraction, mainly lack of attraction of talent to a sector that is not very much valued. The model proposed by Europe and that Spain supports is 9th and 10th of October, the European Network and the Spanish presidency organized a workshop to see how can we move forward with this strategy. And we also had another conference on the 18th and 19th of October, focus on the right to care. The conclusions of both meetings will be tackled in the next Council of Ministers, which will take place at the end of November this year. During this morning, the 14th of it was said the 14th of November in San Sebastian is taking place European Conference of Social Economy, where they're talking about long-term care. EFFE would like for this presidency to focus on home care and also promoting social dialogue. We believe that it's the only way to reinforce the social dialogue so that all these changes can be translated into reality. If there is not a good representation, it's not possible. Families can have to be represented also. We hope, you talked about expectations. We hope that Spain will continue to promote all this, and the next government, as somebody said, that the next government will continue to work.
Thank you very much. And just give us some insight of the ratification of the ILO Convention number 189. What still needs to be done in Spain to take that forward?
As you all know, last year in June, the Convention 189 was ratified. It was a commitment from the government. In Spain, 600,000 people are working in this modality. The majority are women. 65% of these women are migrants, and 1 out of 4 is in an irregular situation, and 1/3 is working without a contract. This morning we saw the survey, 50% in Spain, 1/3 of people are working without a contract. This convention is just the starting point. We have to create a sector. We have to create collective bargaining. There's still a lot to do, but the sector welcomed this convention. It's a sector that needs to be organized because these people are working in silos, and therefore we still have a lot of work to do. On the other hand, recently, it was mentioned that people need to get into the sector. More or less 1.4 million people will have to work in the sector. So we have to grow the sector, and the challenge is huge. But there was a big step with the ratification of the convention.
Excellent, thank you very much. Pierre-Olivier, can I invite you to give us some insight into some of the challenges in France? What are the gaps in the labour market that we heard there's a shortage of people. Can you tell us what the situation is in France?
Alors, bonjour.
Good morning. I'd like to talk to you about the first point about the demographic situation in France. We often say that France is a country where there are many babies, many children, and birth rate has decreased over the past years. But it is nonetheless more dynamic than in other member states. And according to all the prospects, this morning we heard the Ministry of Malta, and the minister said that over 25% of the population was over 65. But this means that in France we are nearing this number, but in Europe in general we can see that population is aging, and today we know that by 2030, according to several models, we will have 800,000 jobs, vacant jobs, because we will have many people over 65. And let me recall you that in France we consider that care for the elderly is a priority when we talk about the loss of independence, but this is also a priority because in the coming years population will be aging, and most of these people will want to stay at home. We've all bear the brunt of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the French people really want to stay at home. This is a trend we can see at the European level. The same goes for childcare facilities, and when it comes to work-life balance, all the challenges have been mentioned. Gender equality, women empowerment. There are several terms used to talk about this reality. And when it comes to our sector, in France, we use the terms conciliation des temps de vie, reconciliation of work-life.
Give us some insight into how your sector is responding to these challenges. You've talked about the slower curve of aging in France, but it's still coming, and you still have needs for young children to be managed. How is your sector responding to these?
Alors, notre secteur, il est...
There are different European models, and we have a model which is based on 3 pillars. On the one hand, we have social partners, so people representing workers. They are very structured, and today we have 6 trade unions representing all the workers, and then we have the trade unions representing the employers, and notably the EFFE. The third pillar is the state, the French state. There are several levels. We first have the social and fiscal status. It is important to understand how things work in France, and over the course of 30 years, we could win 30 points of declaration, so institutional recognition in France. Back in the past, we were at 50%, and it corresponds to the results of the polls, 50% of declared and undeclared work. The tax status, which makes the cost of work less expensive for the employer when they declare their workers. It might be somewhat difficult to understand, but let me repeat that. So in France, it is less expensive to declare a worker than not declare it. So if the worker has 11 euros, 9 euros are taken from the employer. This is linked to a mechanism of tax credit, and this is an incentive for employers to declare their workers. And to answer to your question, this is the dynamic of the social dialogue. All the social partners have signed the agreement, and we have automated all social rights. The money which is given to the people who retire is given to a worker regardless of the employer, regardless of the career, at the end of their career. If you apply that to the metal sector or to another sector, if you change a job, if you go out of if you leave your job and you take another job and then return to your job, you will keep your right and your advantage. So this means that the sector can be recognized and workers are better paid, and on average around 2 to 3 euros, depending on the regions. So we are 2 to 3 euros above the minimum wage. And when it comes to challenges, there is the challenge linked to attractiveness. And now we are trying to find new talent pools. So all the people on the territory, on the French territory, there are new recruitments. There is the bidirectional system. So the fact that people study and work, and then we have also the migration, which is linked to family reunification. There are many women migrants in France, and they are available, and they can be part of this talent pool.
Let me come to you, and let's explore this issue of attractiveness of the care sector and the lack of workers. How are you addressing that?
Muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking the invitation on behalf of the Basque government in order to participate in this Congress. And to respond to our moderator's question, I would also like to describe the reality that we have in the autonomous community of the Basque Country in Spain. As you know, the Basque Country is decentralized in many aspects, and our care policies are also decentralized. We have 2 million inhabitants in the Basque Country. 25% of this group are older than 65, and 4% is older than 90 years old. We see clear aging of our population in the Basque Country. In 2023, we had 100,000 people that required long-term care. And I also like to underline something that is particular in the sector. The sector is not configured as such in Euskadi or the Basque Country. We speak of LTC, long-term care, and this has enabled us to formalize a series of solutions at the autonomous community. We have 80,000 people living in their own homes, and out of those, we have 35,000 employees working in the care sector. Many are working thanks to the public services that provide help in people's homes, and they have public financing, but the rest, all of the remaining employees are in the informal economy, with the consequences that Carmele had mentioned, the precarization of work, the regularization of different solutions. We see this in the Basque Country, but also many other regions in Spain. We need to continue formalizing and regularizing this sector. This makes it a very unappealing sector for the youth. It is highly feminized. There's many women, a lot more women in the home sector, with a large proportion of migrants in irregular situations. Our sector is therefore facing many challenges in terms of attractiveness. It is not well paid and does not have sufficient professional recognition. The Basque Country has decided to design new strategies in order to restructure the services and home care and long-term care sector. We have therefore launched a series of measures to professionalize the situation of many that are working in people's homes. And we wanted to share responsibilities not just with the Ministry of Employment. We wanted to have a holistic perspective that would include other sectors and other systems. The health sector, housing, education, and social services. We try to have a cross-cutting approach so that our sector could obtain the necessary recognition in order to respond to a population that is aging. Thank you.
Very much. And I know that you have a really interesting project, the ZaneLab project, that you can tell us about, which is a way to address some of these challenges that you've highlighted. So could you tell us about ZaneLab?
Yes, of course. Well, ZaneLab is a project that was born at the beginning of our current legislature, and it was born with that very same goal. It wanted to structure a sector that had many deficiencies, and we wanted to have a holistic perspective. Employment plays a vital role, of course, because we know that there's a lack of attractiveness in the sector, and we will require a lot of employees. It is estimated that the demand will be of 40,000 job positions in the next few years. So under that premise, under that requirement, we started reflecting and we started collaborating with other actors in order to professionalize those that were already working in people's homes. Many of them were women, as I said, many were migrants, and they had problems as regards their regular or irregular situation in the country. And this enabled us to continue working and get closer to those realities through innovating technologies and strategies. We were able to promote the integration of these workers so that they could gain access to training programs that would give them the necessary diplomas and certificates that recognize that those skills that they had acquired. We had innovating technologies in order to do so, and we also wanted to underscore reskilling programs for those that already had the necessary training and skills in terms of IT tools, ethics of care, amongst many other disciplines. We wanted to have that reskilling program for those that had basic training, basic skills that needed to adapt to the new requirements. We also wanted to look into new professional profiles. I speak of the care fields, not so much the care sector, because the sector has not obtained sufficient recognition at this point. Many of you spoke of childcare. This, in our case, is incorporated in long-term care, as we have an integral approach. But as I said, we looked into new professional profiles that would be useful in order to face these demographic challenges. This is related to direct care, but also our link to the community, to the use of digital tools, and the ways in which we can improve people's lives as they decide to stay in their homes. We want them to be able to have decent lives and fulfilling lives as well. This is why I also refer to the ethics of care, preparation for passing away, preparation for death. All of these aspects have been part of our programs. And then we have a fourth working line, which is the reintegration of professions that were already existing that needed to acquire more knowledge on aging. I'm referring here to people working in pharmacies, for instance, that are attending elderly people, and architects designing housing, different public spaces, for them to take into account the needs of the aging population. We speak of silverization to describe aging in Spanish. And, well, this allows us to include that aspect in many disciplines. Many of us are aging. We need to have that recognition in all spheres of life. And anyway, this is a program that we have developed for the past 3 years with integrated services. And we have included different companies from the social economy. You were referring to the social economy as well. This was essential in order to articulate different aspects of the sector for it to fully include the aging population. And we were able to collaborate with that company from the social economy. This was key. Thank you.
Thank you very much for explaining this project. It's very interesting to hear about. In a few moments, I'm going to be opening the floor to you for questions. So we're just going to show you again the Slido code, QR code, because you will have an opportunity to ask questions after our next speaker. So get ready. Think about what you might like to ask our panel. And now let me bring in Nicola. We've heard, and we saw that in the previous video, that it's all about making the invisible visible, to making the unrecognizable recognized. And one of the key elements you need for that is data and evidence. You're working with the EFFE Lab. Can you tell us a little bit, what is the EFFE Lab?
Merci. Tout d'abord, je tiens à remercier EFFE.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank EFFE for inviting me. To answer to your question, EFFE Lab is a tool which is used for the home care services. We intend to complement what already exists. We want to help institutions in the various countries to implement various policies, and to do that, we use various skills. The aim of the first deliverable, which was being published at the beginning of the year, was to set the scene of the sector when it comes to home care services for people and households. We lack precise analyses, and several people in the sector are not yet recognized. When it comes to the analysis, we only have a partial view of the reality, so we've decided to cross-check data to have a complete overview of the reality, and we could see that the percentage of direct employment in the whole sector is above 34%, identified by Eurostat. We've also assessed the features in the various member states. We therefore have an interactive map, and we can therefore compare the situation in the various member states. This is a tool for the sector and for each stakeholder of the sector. 6 months ahead of the elections, this tool is important which will be used by the next Parliament and the next Commission to work. We've already talked about the challenges we've been facing: attractiveness, the lack of professionalization, and so on.
That will be coming out soon, looking at skills, workforce and migration in this sector. Can you tell us a little bit how you carried out the results and what were the preliminary findings?
Donc pour ce rapport,
as far as the report is concerned, we wanted to study the links between migration and the sector in the EU. We all know that there are two pillars to this analysis: an increase in demand, which is led by the demographic challenge, and the shortage of labor in the sector. This is what we can read in a report of the European Commission when it comes notably to sectors experiencing shortages in France. And the attractiveness has been analyzed through the analysis of the literature. We've tried to understand the impact of the lack of visibility from a social point of view on the recognition and the development of the sector. We've also looked into the barriers faced by migrants, who represent around 30% of the workers. Migrant people are those who are already on the territory and those who will soon arrive in the EU. Among the main barriers, there is the status, language, and house. Despite all the efforts made, all these people are still facing many challenges, and right now the European Commission says that the potential of value creation of PHS is hovering around 5 million euros. We will strengthen the legal framework and especially the attractiveness of the sector.
See you soon. I promised I would turn the floor over to you for your questions, and we've received. Let's see the Slido that we've received. We've received 2 questions, but for those of you who are here, we can do hands up if you have a question or a comment you would like to make to the panel. So this is your opportunity. Is there anyone here who would like to ask a question or put a point to our panel to answer. I'm happy to pass the floor and open the microphone. If there's nobody here, we'll start maybe with the questions that we have already on the screen. And we've got a question here talking about the language that we use. And we heard that earlier so much on the gender aspects. And here it says, why do you say it's women are providing unpaid care services, are therefore not working and not economically active? So that's, I think, a comment about the language. So next question, maybe Philippe, you can help us look at lessons from around the world. Japan is ahead of the curve. Japan has aged faster than Europe has. So has Japan depended on migrant workers? How have they addressed things? Maybe you could share experience.
Very honestly, I cannot say much about migrant workers. I know that they have some migrant workers, notably Koreans who come to work in Japan. But what I want to say regarding Japan, it's my colleagues who work with a Japanese research consortium on a digital coach for aging. So Japan and the other Southeast Asian countries who are massively aging put a very strong emphasis on technology. And I must say, culturally, this is also maybe more accepted. When you think of developments such as care robots, or they have very famously Japan brought to the United Nations to a discussion on older persons a little seal, so the animal, a seal, which looks very cute and makes very cute noises, and explained how this, and so it's actually a robot, how this companion is improving the quality of life of people. From our European perspective, we always ask ourselves in how far this really is a solution for loneliness, and in how far it is just trying to find a solution, but we, from our perspective, would say that there needs to be more human contact, more humans there, rather than more technology. Although that does not mean that, I mean, technology has a very strong role to play to improve working conditions, to improve care provision, to increase the number of care tasks that technology can provide. But for us, this should always be linked to maintaining or increasing even the level of human interaction, because this is really what makes life interesting. We always talk about the care sector as if it was something only medical, where it's about biological needs, where people can feed themselves, can keep themselves clean, etc. But actually, once we have provided all that, what do the people live for? They live for being included in society and having this human contact.
Okay, thank you. I think there's an interesting question for Pierre-Olivier, because it talks about the fact that there's quite a large number of the actual workers who are involved in this sector come from a migrant background. How does that get represented into organizations like yours, which represents the sector? How do we make sure there's more visibility? And looking at this room as well, and this is a comment from the audience, we aren't representative of the people who are working in the sector. So how do you make sure that authentic experience is brought into the work that you do?
Alors, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure,
As I said before, on the migration issue, you asked me two questions. So the representation of workers is indeed of paramount importance in our sectors. We also have negotiations on different aspects of social rights. But more concretely, in the last couple of years, we've managed to establish a true partnership so as to be some sort of partner for employers, but also for workers. Let's say that all the partners are playing a complementary role. And in that framework, we decided to create a website. And I would say that it's rather unique because it's addressed to all users. It's called France Emploi Domicile. So the aim of which is to be an information portal, objective information portal, because there's a plethora of information that you can find here, there, and everywhere. So it's very important to put things back in order, to be objective in terms of conveying the information. And this is one of the missions that we have between social partners. And the other aim of the website is to indeed promote the highest number possible of services for people. So that's one part of your question. But you also, you talked about the visibility of those workers and institutionalization. Now, our system, perhaps I wasn't clear enough, but our system really promotes declaring work. So 80% of people working in our sector are declared workers, so there's still 20% undeclared work. And I'm very hopeful that this will decrease with time. We're mobilizing ourselves to this end. And as regards the attractivity of the sector, I really believe on working on salaries. I think that at some stage, this is going to be a main factor for attractiveness and attractivity of the sector, because, of course, this has to do with the quality of the job, and this gives people the possibility to have a job that makes sense, that allows them to indeed develop themselves. Now, you were talking about upskilling and reskilling. We have programs to this end as well in order to develop career patterns. This all will make the sector attractive.
Professionalization, and it says, should we improve the very strict regulation of recognition of foreign qualifications? So we have people who are coming to Europe, but their qualifications may not be recognized, which makes it difficult to bring professionals into our care sector. Would you like to comment on that?
Sí.
It's an important challenge for the professional training at European level. We do not have the possibility. The homologation it's important, and mainly for people outside of the European Union. It's something we have to work on regarding vocational training. Now, women and the representation of women in this sector. An important issue on which we want to work is the fact that there are too many women in this sector. It's true, women have done this work free of charge until now, and this has led to a crisis, the care crisis. The majority of women who are doing this at a professional level are still women. So we need to professionalize the sector in order to give it prestige, but we also need men to get into this sector, into the care sector. You can do that from the other side of care. And it's true, currently, women are the majority in the care sector. Paid and unpaid. So we have to resolve that gap. If men do not assume their responsibility, the path is going to be difficult, and therefore we have to work on that co-responsibility so that we can see it in the professionalized sector, care sector, and the non-professionalized one. You've given figure of Sweden and Finland. In Spain, those are not the figures. Men do not take care so much at a professional level and non-professional.
Thank you. For the last question, I'd like to invite Carmel to respond, because we've got a question that says, do you think the European Commission should support the creation of a career for care workers, and in particularly home care workers? So are you looking for European Commission support for the recognition of a profession, a career path for care workers?
As we said before, with the ratification of the convention, we have a path of visibility, but we need skills, not only the threshold skills, no, but advanced skills, so that people can have a career within the care sector. And linked to the immigration, as we are in the skills year, skills need to be linked also to the cultural aspect, so that both the people working at in the organizations and those working in the care sector can have this cultural link. We need to attract talent, we need to professionalize, we need to have a look to migration, but we need specific skills.
Thank you very much. Can we say a warm thank you to the panel for their contributions? Please take a seat. And just before we go to the lunch break, I don't put away your phones because I still need one more Slido poll from you. We asked you earlier how many of you had employed people at home, and 70% said yes. Then we asked who was declared, and about half were declared and half weren't. The next question we want to ask you is, what are the key criteria that you use when you're looking to employ somebody in the home environment? We've given you a couple of choices. So we'll show you the Slido poll. It should be active right now. We're saying, okay, what's your key criteria? Is it cost? Is it affordability? Is that the number one key criteria? Is it their skills, their competencies, their qualifications, their ability to do what you need them to do? Or the third point is they're coming into your home. You need to maybe have the right chemistry, the right feeling. It's got to feel like someone who you think would be caring, who would work well with the children or the older people or the family member who needs care. So we want to understand for you, what is the key criteria for making that decision? And so far, we're getting the votes in clearly that it's all about the right relationship. It's about the click, the chemistry for the person who's coming in. Are they going to be kind? Will they be friendly? Will they bring in news of the outside world to the person who's in the home environment? Will it be more than a job to them? So clearly that's looking to be one of the issues. Their skills and their ability, and obviously that makes a big difference. If you've got someone with complex medical needs, somebody who has the skills base to deal with it. Cost, of course, is still an issue. And we heard that the vast majority of it is either unpaid or unrecognized, so that burden often falls on families. But we just wanted to understand from you, and 70% of people say you've done this, you have employed someone at home. We wanted to understand what were your key criteria. And so we've had, yes, almost 90 votes in, and that tells us again that the top key criteria for 2/3 of you, it's about the feeling, the sensation that this person will be in your home with someone who's vulnerable. You've got to trust them. There's got to be that strong feeling. So thank you very much for sharing that. And we'll refer to that this afternoon when we explore more about it.